Attending the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society. This is a presentation during Black History Month. So again, we're glad to have everybody. So I'm saying hello to the community, board members, members of the society, and we have Sterling Howe, the programs manager. He will be monitoring the chat along with Karen Kay and so forth. There's the website right there. The Historical Society, of course, has membership. We're always looking at new members to join us. We have lots of programs that goes on. We got a lot of projects, and we're always looking for partnerships and collaborators. And of course, we always appreciate folks' support. What I'm going to do today is present, and then we'll open up to Q&A when we're done. The title of this session is Finally Remembered, the African American Patriots of Central Virginia during the Revolutionary War. So again, this is supposed to be a book that's coming out, so I'm working on it. I'm going to have my teacher hat on. I'm going to go through some basic military research because I don't know where people are at. Are they beginners? Are they intermediate or advanced researchers, especially going back to the Revolutionary War? I'll cover an overview of records and resources, and again, acknowledging some patriots from Central Virginia. So this is my quote. There's not one war or conflict on the soil of British America to the United States of America that a person of color has not been involved with. And as I've done this research over several years, I've come to learn that. And military has a little special place in my heart as well. So why am I writing a book about this? Well, I moved to Virginia in 2003. I noticed Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, the presidents in the area. There wasn't any battles in the Central Virginia area, and I tend to look at the counties of Albemarle, Buckingham, Louisa, Fluvanna, Nelson, Orange, and Culpeper, in that Central Virginia area, but I didn't see any kind of monuments or something about them or pretty much any markers. I saw a lot of Civil War stuff in which, a lot of communities across the country, were taking down Civil War monuments. Some might still have some. So I needed to know what was going on. I knew there was Albemarle Barracks, and that was where some British and German prisoners that were captured during the Battle of Saratoga, and they got relocated to Albemarle Barracks in Charlottesville. I learned about Jack Jewett's ride, which was June 3rd and 4th, 81, and that's because I belong to the Jack Jewett chapter, which I joined in 2013. The reason I joined was, number one, I liked what they stood for about preserving history and so forth. But also, I joined because I could, because they didn't allow African American women at one time for membership, but now they do. And there's plenty of women of color that are now members. And of course, I had plenty of questions about the area. I'm not from Virginia. I do have research ties to Virginia, but I just didn't know or didn't get exposed to that prior to moving here. So in progress, the title of the book is Finally Remembered, the Black Patriots of Central Virginia. That could change at any time. And I say finally remembered because you'll see in a couple slides from now about the forgotten patriots. Well, they're not being forgotten anymore, but at the time, that was a perfect title for a book that came out. So I had a question, why don't we hear more about this part of the American Revolution, that there were Black folks involved? And so I went to the National Park site, and you can see the quote, the answer on their Park Service site said, unfortunately, systematic racism and historical bias have erased or buried many records of Black and Indigenous people who played a prominent role in the founding of the United States. Well, that definitely perked my interest and made me more curious and more questions. So I wanted to get an understanding of military records. They are a gold mine for genealogy research. They typically include details about the service member, possibly their family, their personal lives, and the communities that they could have came from or would have came from. Also, service records can provide rank, unit, when they enlisted, when they got out, what battles they might have been involved in, or what service they provided to soldiers, or anything on behalf of breaking away from the British, for this country to break away. You also will see personal information. In dealing with a lot of African Americans, a lot of times their birth years are estimated. So, birthplace, age, always physical description. I'm not sure why, but they always had physical descriptions on a lot of the records. And of course, we could also learn of family members and any social connections around each other with other fellow soldiers and things like that. So a lot of times researching someone, you might want to look at the other folks that are within the same group to see if they're mentioned or find additional information. So getting started, you want to gather initial information. Start asking questions. Collect family stories about anybody in the family that might have had military service. You got home sources like letters, diaries, journals, could be some medals in a box or something in your house that your family has, looking for discharge papers, even back during the Revolutionary War, of course, Civil War, and coming forth. You want to be able to identify the war and the branch of service and basically how long they were involved. Identify relevant military records. You want details about the enlistments and assignments. Look for pension records, draft registration cards, bounty land records. Because some folks got, instead of a pension, they're getting bounty land. So basically, free federal land, and they'll be somewhere else from where they lived. Also, you want to look for unit histories. We are definitely in the technology era right now for sure. And you can type the type of regiment they were in and find out more history about them, which could also help track where your soldier could have been. Then you're going to have to locate those records that you're asking for information about. Of course, the National Archives. They basically are the primary repository for military records, service files, and of course, pension applications. You've got your state archives. Typically, they're going to hold records for the state militia and National Guard units. Online databases, Fold 3 for the Revolutionary War is got to be it. I'll mention a little bit more about them later. And Ancestry and, of course, Family Search. There are other sites as well. So when researching African American for military records, again, you're going to have to find out a regiment, a unit, companies, look for websites, blogs, books, profiles, look at the local level, which is huge. Be aware of the potential gaps that could occur in the records. Because a lot of times what I found researching these Revolutionary War folks, they might have got out of the service in the late 1700s, but they don't apply for their pension until like 1833 and so forth. So you want to look for specialized resources as well, like the American Revolutionary War Museum and the database that they have. Also looking for African American military ancestors, and this would be in the case of any of them during wartime in any war. There's going to be challenges. We already know that. There could be inconsistent record keeping racial problems, discrimination, records just not being available, or we just have, as the public, don't have access to it. So look for best practices. Start with the oral history like we do for all genealogy. Yes, census can play a part. They will help, but they won't be a finalized confirming type situation because a lot of times your federal population census has inaccurate information. And back during these early years, you're only getting the head of household in age ranges, possibly of who else is in the household. Of course, you want to look for pension files in any military database and collaborate with the museums and things. I mentioned the American Revolutionary War Museum in Philadelphia. You got the African American Civil War Museum. Even though it's concentrated on Civil War, they could have and do have information regarding soldiers from Revolutionary War. And then, of course, you've got the International African American Museum. And don't forget the universities or things that are in your area and the historical societies as well. Find out that somebody write an article about somebody. Online resources again, Fold 3's #1, National Archives, and of course the Smithsonian and their African American history. So, what did I need to know about the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783? Who was involved? The American colonies versus Great Britain. The war occurred because the colonists were trying to break away because the British wanted to they put in a rule to taxing without representation and some other grievances. So I'm assured that most of you know that story. But what's not often talked about is the African American participation. It's estimated about 7,000 plus African Americans served. We got the roles that they were in. They were soldiers, laborers, spies, and so forth. Spies, I put an example there of James Armstead Lafayette from Virginia. He was a spy. But the challenges that they occurred is that freedom was often promised, but they didn't get it. So taking a peek at the Revolutionary War, and so I'm gathering my mind ready to write this book because I'm thinking this local area only is servicing Civil War issues when we had 3 presidents, 3 historical homes, a major university in the community, and I'm just not seeing a whole lot, about Revolutionary War. And Thomas Jefferson, of course, at the time was the governor. So, it didn't work out. They wanted to tax the American colonies. So they start a militia gathered, and they're going to fight the British for again to break away from independence. So basically, you're talking about the war starting at Lexington and Concord. George Washington took on the role of the commander of the Continental Army July 3rd, 1775, and the war begins basically 1775 with the Battle of Lexington. The war lasted about 8 years, and during that time, what's happening during that time is the Declaration of Independence is also coming to bringing the states together. The war ends September 3rd, 1783. Great Britain signed a Treaty of Paris and recognized the U.S., or what we become the United States of America, independent of them. So, yep, I had to go online, find me a chart to understand what are the birth years. I'm going to be researching these individuals, but I need to know if there's birth years. This was a chart I've got offline. I thought it was the Family Tree magazine, but it's not. This is another one, so I can't cite the source except that I got it on the internet. And this is really good for any military that you're researching. #1, you can see at the top, Revolutionary War. The birth years of the folks are 1726 to 1767. And I'm saying that specifically because there were men or boys that lied about their age to get in. But at least you have a range. And the battle years, again, 1775 to 1783. And of course, you can see the other ones. This talk is going to be recorded, so you can always come back to it. It'll be on our YouTube page. That's the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society page. So you'll be able to look at this again or download that chart. I also, and I'm embarrassed to say, as a military wife, I did not know how the units were made up. So, yes, I went to the internet and I had to find a chart. And here's the chart from Encyclopedia Britannica. Y'all remember them, right? And I wanted to know because I always see regiment. Well, what made up a regiment? Well, 3 battalions. All right. Well, what made up a battalion? And you can look on the chart. A regiment is 3 battalions, which is 2,000 to 8,000 troops. And then look to the right, brigadier or a general or a colonel are the one that are commanders. I had to check down the battalion. That's 2 to 5 companies. That's 400 to 1,200 troops. And they're overseen or commanded by lieutenant colonel and so forth. So again, I'm trying to get some more knowledge about what made up regiments, companies, platoons, and so forth. And again, as we were talking before I got started, I've done research on a family member from World War II. So I'm trying to separate World War II and the Revolutionary War to see the differences of things that was going on. So, thinking about African Americans, just how many served in the Continental Army or the state militia? Well, according to DAR, in a book that was done, there was 6,600, but there was also a supplement added to that. So, pretty much we see the African American and American Indians served on the Patriots side is supposedly up to 7,000. There's different numbers varying. Why? Because the records were not kept by race. Where now we can go look at World War I, World War II, and it's going to tell us the race of the person. Well, during this time, you're not going to see that unless you complete the research and basically come forward and then go back to, to find that soldier. But then again, I caution because a lot of people have the same names too. So you also have to figure out if it's a white person or a person of color. But think about this. African Americans had to fight to get in the war. They had to fight during the war, and they had to fight after the war. And as you all know, that's present here, that saga continues to today. So just how many Black loyalists there were? Because you had those that fought for America and those that fought for the British or loyal to the crown. There was a Dunmore Proclamation, which I have in quotes up here. All indentured servants, Negroes or others free that are able and willing to bear arms, they joining his majesty's troops as soon as may be, for the speedily reducing this colony to a proper dignity. That was a proclamation. So basically, November 7th, 1775, he promised Black folks freedom if they fought on behalf of the crown. So what research from Woody Holton said was half of who joined were women and children, as in Blacks. There was the Ethiopian regiment, and Lord Dunmore's military unit had about 300 men who fled their Virginia enslavers and fought, and then, of course, lost the Battle of the Great Bridge, December 9th, 1775. So thousands of Blacks fought as loyalists, up to 20,000, and I've seen various figures on that, and about 3,000 left on ships heading to New York from the British. And I'll mention that a little bit later, and that's about the Book of Negroes. And most of you have probably seen the movie that was out. After the war, about 15,000 African Americans or Africans ended up in Canada, Britain, Caribbean island, and of course, some were resold into slavery. This is an example page on the right of the Book of Negroes. When the British evacuated Savannah in 1782, again, thousands of black men and women had escaped from their enslavement. The British compiled this Book of Negroes with 3,000 former slaves that have joined them prior to signing of a 1782 provisional treaty. Those 3,000, as I mentioned before, departed from New York, November 1783. 1,019 men, 914 women, 339 boys, 339 girls, and 76 children whose gender was unidentified. And again, there is a movie. Matter of fact, there is a new documentary or movie coming out sometime this year on the Book of Negroes. So just how did these black men and women possibly serve during the Revolutionary War? Well, general laborers, cooks, and so forth, infantry, artillery, sailors and ship pilots, spies, scouts, and couriers, drummers and fifers, and some stayed at a private level rank, so they're in the field. So I wanted to basically, for folks that are new to this research during this colonial time, is to know about the lineage society, which again is a specific society that's identified people that were involved in certain things. Daughters of the American Revolution, Sons of the American Revolution, and you can see their little emblems on the left-hand side. And what they do, they require their members to prove that they are a descendant of some specific group of people, as in Revolutionary War. So what is acceptable documentation? I'm basically giving you DAR, and that's birth, death, marriage, will information. Town meeting minutes always help because you can clock somebody where they're at. Pension records and affidavit. And basically, you just need to prove it. There is a process to join these societies, and there's a lot of them around. And I'm going to share with you another one that's been around for a few years, and it's the First African Families of English America. And this society is growing. Their annual conference is coming up in May at the American Revolutionary Museum and War Museum in Philadelphia. And basically, if you want to join this society, you have to join by being able to document an African American ancestor who lived prior to March 5th, 1770. Now, March 5th should give you some clue to something and part of during this wartime. And so think about that date, and if somebody can answer that, they can put it in the chat. So again, that's the process of getting through there. It is pretty much the same steps as if you were joining Sons of the American Revolution, SAR, or DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution. And there's their website right there. And if there's questions about that, I can entertain those after. DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution, have a page up about minority research. Because if you've got folks in the Civil War and you've gotten that far, they had parents, they had siblings, and so forth. So you can keep going and finding out. So there's lots of tools and information that DAR provides about researching your African American patriot. But let me first describe what a patriot is. Not all of patriots are on the front line with a gun or a soldier. Patriots could also be recognized as providing a service on behalf of America breaking away from Great Britain. So understand, a patriot doesn't always mean a soldier, but they did or contributed to whatever the means. It could be someone providing services or a cook or something that is cooking for a regiment or so forth, or delivering goods or a wagoneer type person. And again, we'll go through a few folks that I have that'll be in this book. So anyway, this is a tool for you to come in, look at, find out, and of course they have a check sheet that you can follow. DAR a couple years ago put up this website, which is about their Black patriots that are coming from the book called Forgotten Patriots. And so this is the cover sheet of it, the front page of it. This is the book on the left. And there was, I think this was back in 2008 that it was conducted. And again, you can see the title of it, Forgotten Patriots, and it's African American and American Indian patriots in the Revolutionary War. So this book, when it first came out, sold, and basically it was for sale. It is now in a PDF form, and you can download it. And so it's also searchable. It's in PDF. There was also a supplement that came out in 2008 as well, and had additional 82 pages with more names included. So I'm giving out a thank you for those that were on that team or involved. And I believe Eric Grunset was heading up this project, and a couple of my friends worked on it and so forth. So I say thank you, because this is the base of where I collected names for who I'm targeting for my book. So if you're looking inside that book, Forgotten Patriots, I'm showing you just a page of Virginian folks. And you can see the surname Goins, different spellings. That's part, my family are Goins and so forth. But what you're looking at is names, they're identified, and also what resources and what county they are either from, served, or where they applied for their pension from. It just depends as you go through. So this is a look at what you'll see if you download the Forgotten Patriots book. We all know about Christmas addicts. Remember, I mentioned think about March 5th, 1770. He was thought to be a mulatto and also a runaway. He died by 2 musket balls to the chest, and supposedly the first person who was killed for the revolution. And this is a picture I got from Library of Congress. Little look at the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. It was known as the Black Regiment. Of course, they were also promised their freedom. Total about 225 men, and 140 of them were African Americans, by far the largest percentage of Black in an integrated military unit during the Revolutionary War. So one thing I want to make sure folks understand, this stuff was not segregated. You know what I'm saying? So Blacks and whites are fighting together, and different than, say, Civil War. So General Washington, of course, wasn't in favor of allowing Blacks enslaved or free fight, but that did change. And again, this is just a peek at the 1st Rhode Island. There is lots of information online. And of course, you could go right to a page that specifically gives you more details with what they were involved in and what battles they were in. So this is a look at Fold 3, their page. 95% of the Revolutionary War files are on Fold 3. It is a paid site. Some of you might have Ancestry and All Access, which will include Fold 3. It used to be called Footnote. And again, it has Continental Army, the state information, state and local militia, pension files, payment voucher information. There's well over 23 million records and more. It's constantly being updated. And you can see the different sources that are on there. War of 1812, Indian and Mexican War, and so forth. So again, this is a place for military information. So I also had to collect books. These are some of the favorites that I have. I heard a talk with Judith Buskirk, the first one on the left, in Standing in Your Own Light. I learned more, and this is a couple years ago. Her talk was on Ben Franklin's world, and it just got me excited. I said, oh my gosh, there's even more history, more things are going on. And then DAR sister Marion Lane, Dr. Marion Lane, she did a children's book, and that's the book in the middle called The Patriots of African Descent. And basically, an ancestor is telling the grandchildren or great grands about service and Black patriots and so forth. And Kurt Van Dyck, who is at the University of Virginia, I worked with him on the Gibbons Project. That was one of the first books I was reading when I started doing the work at UVA. And then there's a whole chapter on the Revolutionary War folks and folks that were free that fought. And then I mentioned Shirley Green at the beginning before we started recording. That is her new book that just came out a few months ago, Revolutionary Blacks. And again, her family are the Frank brothers, and they were freeborn and they were soldiers. So she does a talk. You can Google C-SPAN and Dr. Shirley Green, Revolutionary Blacks, and so forth. So there's a lot more information that's coming available to help people do this type of research. So for me, these are the numbers that I have come up with so far. Albemarle, I really have 14 to 17. Some people have the same name, so I'm not sure if I'm looking at the same one yet. So the genealogy portion is not done, but you can see Buckingham, Culpeper, Fluvanna. So far, I haven't found anyone identified with Green, but doing research, I've got to do Green with the E and Green without the E and hope that some come up. And I'm sure there are some. So I will say to folks that are attending and watching this, if you know of more patriots, Black patriots within one of these counties or a county in Central Virginia, contact me, let me know. And I will say that I just listened to a recording of the Culpeper folks, and that's where I got to 20. They called out each of their names and where they served, which is very interesting. It was a wonderful ceremony, and that was sponsored by the Sons of the American Revolution and the Daughters. So here's a few of the surnames that I am researching for this book. And basically, if you look down on the left, those are pretty much all the ones, not all, but just some of the ones in Albemarle County. All stocks are in Louisa. Second column, you're looking in Fluvanna, and you're also looking in Nelson. So again, in Culpeper also, and some of these names are also in other counties, but still within the realm of, Central Virginia. But that's just some of them that I'm going after. And if you look at Goins, yeah, there's several spellings. Even Bowles, there's several spellings and so forth. And of course, I'll highlight a few of these folks so you'll get, a little peek at what the process is of researching. This is Sherrard Goins' service card. And you can see it says on the left, VA, got his name, the wife's name under, or heir, but wife. And you see the W7545. That tells me the widow got the pension. So that means he probably got a pension, died, and then she was able to pick up the pension. So now I'm going to show you the different records that you would encounter researching Revolutionary soldiers. So first, what's in the service record? Remember, fold 3's got 95%. And what you're going to see on a service record, detail pretty much, name, location, who that individual served under, could be dates of them being on a roll, date of the pension being issued, and the location. Could be the dollar amount on there, and you can see on the right. It also note what act approved or allowed that payment to happen. So this is Sherrard Goins, says he's in Albemarle and so forth. and he was transcribed on the roll of Virginia, $8 a month, and it started on the 8th of July, 1829. If you look down in the lower right-hand corner, it says Revolutionary Claim, Acts, March 18, 1818, and May 1, 1820. So basically, after that time, folks were allowed to apply for their pension. So again, applying for the pension, what is in the pension record? And what you're looking at is one, and I know you can't read it, and I'm sorry, but this is Sherrard Goin, and now his spelling of the last name is just Goin, and that is right up there. Again, you're going to find location, date, name, background information. It will tell you about what battles. This is almost like an interview. And they're responding. They're saying, this is my involvement. This is where I'm at. This is the location. This is who was the commander, and also might also name other soldiers and of course witnesses. And I want to make this clear that this is not just Revolutionary War pensions that have this type of information, Civil War, and so forth. These are gold mines of finding information. And again, folks that have, researched whatever war it was, the value of being able to find pensions. And I will make one comment that the International African American Museum in Charleston is collecting United States colored troop pensions to make them available online. They will have the largest collection than what's at NARA, because they are gathering them all over the place, and there's some massive scanning going on. So hopefully if you have some you're willing to share, just let me know and I'll give you the email to contact the persons at the museum. So again, this is Sherrard Goins. Got another spelling of his last name and first name. And I know it's hard to see, but he died. You see the same number, 7545. The widow applied and got the pension. So you're getting a date, you're getting name, and you're getting location. Just what we want as researchers, family historians, genealogists. You also can find final payment vouchers, index for military pensions, and of course these pension cards that run from 1818 to 1864. So again, another spelling of Sherrard. Look in the right-hand corner of his pension, the final payment voucher. So I'm showing you a copy of his and then his wife down at the bottom. Again, you're getting the index for the final payment for the veteran or the widow. And typically you're not going to see this in the pension application files, but they do give additional information where the family have moved, during whatever time after, say, the husband or the spouse passed, and what children might be listed. Sometimes you'll catch the maiden name of the widow, and all of these type of things are on fold 3. So again, you're looking at name, agency of the payment, the date of the act that approved it, date of the payment, and the death date as well. So Shadrach battles, note of being called as yellow, so that's light skin, and he was a planner. So I'm going to run through a few of these and give you some highlights and some of the information that I found on them. Shadrach Battles is known in Central Virginia, and I do believe there might be a historical marker on him, or Sherrard Goins. But he basically enlisted in Amherst and served 3 years. And it says the 10th Regiment. So his rank was private. He served with the 10th and the 6th. You see the list of the commanders in the brigade. So again, I had to understand, well, how many people is he with? That's why I wanted to learn about the groupings, how many people were in a regiment, because I'm not going to just look at him. I also want to look at if he mentions any other names in his pension. I want to find out about them as well, because did they come from the same community? Did they have the same type job? And they had him as a carpenter and a laborer. And you can see on the right hand side the battles or engagement that Shadrach Battles is in. I know there's descendants still in the Central Virginia area from Shadrach Battles. And so you can see he was at Brandywine, Germantown, and so forth. He got discharged with honorable discharge in 1780. Oh, he's the one with the recognized historical highway marker. You see his wife and a list of his children. So again, slight information. The whole purpose of this book is to give acknowledgement to those and be recognized, no different than anyone else that helped this country get its independence. So here's just some other additional information regarding him. You see a piece of the Shadrach Battle service record on the left. In the middle, a friend of mine, Barrington, had found a newspaper article from the New York Times in 1931 talking about Shadrach Battles, a Negro from Albemarle County, was a soldier at the Revolution, and so forth. So again, this information is out there. And then there's letters. There's letters that people wrote in, either asking for information, or maybe it's someone that is supporting an effort to find more information, or it's the witnesses. And so basically, this was a letter that was sent in, and Shadrach Battles actually has a mark, so we know he couldn't sign his name, and given his details about his service. Okay, Richard Spinner, Albemarle County. Richard Spinner was born a slave. This one has a certain interest to me. He was born a slave, but he did get freed, right? And J. Bevel was the one that freed him, and I probably misspelled Bevel's name. And then, of course, he joined the Virginia Infantry. He served one term for himself. The second term, he was a wagoner and he was a substitute for someone else. So again, that's why you see the black man with the wagon. So I was having fun with AI, getting images of black folks, not necessarily always in a uniform, but he was a wagoner, taking care of the wagoners and supplies and so forth. He did have several children. I'm naming out two of the sons, and that's William Spinner and Garland Spinner. And what I have on the right-hand side is Valerie Spinner Banks. She is a descendant of Richard Spinner coming through her ancestor, Garland Spinner. So I wanted to also share that we're making connections with descendants as well. So what is the interest for me with Richard Spinner? Well, I also gathered more information about him. He got a pension. You got the Patriots of Color, which is another website that is out there and available. So it's showing you the details of Richard Spinner, and it was verified. And then his final payment voucher at the bottom. And you can see came out of Richmond, the money. The date of the act was 1862, date of payment, and the date of his death was February 23rd, 1863. There is a book out, Virginians in the Revolution, and you can see Richard Spinner, Albemarle Military. Okay, so my connection to Richard, which was very interesting, is his son William. Why? Because William is under the project. Most of you know I work for UVA, and my job is to find descendants of the free and enslaved folks that helped build the University of Virginia, starting from Jefferson's time and so forth. Well, Richard's son William was the first free Black employee at the University of Virginia as a janitor, and that was between 1825 and 1826, and that was during the first year of its opening. He also dug wells and cleaned out just like his dad did. William brought a lot in the city of Charlottesville, and it sold in 1836 and so forth. But also what I found in some of the research, and it's not verified totally, and he purchased and then manumitted two Black men, possibly friends, And again, then he just kind of disappears in the records in 1836. But what I'm showing you on the right-hand side is actually for his dad, Richard, where it says that he goes in as a soldier, and also he goes in as a questionnaire, that he goes in as a wagoner, but as a substitute. So I just wanted you to see what that document looked like. So that's my connection with William Spinner. I talked to Valerie a couple nights ago, and, we're still researching and getting more information about these gentlemen and the family. So Johnson Smith, I love that this man has two first names or two last names, pretty much. He's also Albemarle. So you see his service card, and then you see a letter that's there. This information I gathered on the letter. You can find the transcribed pension records on revwarapps.org. And here, Johnson Smith, born about 1765, and of course, his family relocates up to Ohio. He dies in 1837. We find out he was married to Nancy Phillips in Augusta County, Virginia. So we're still in the central Virginia area. And they got married about 1791, 1792. And there's a list of their children. So again, gathering information. And when he came on his pension application, the witnesses, which I found is just awesome, the witness was saying that he knew Johnson Smith for 40 or 50 years. So I thought that was amazing. And again, that person is a white person that's given this support, and this person verifying that he served and also that they knew them. Here is a picture of Johnson Smith to show you a little bit about his military service. He enlisted in Albemarle, and I've got on here where he served, but his role, because you can see that this is a black man holding on to a red coat. His role, he guarded prisoners of the Convention Army, captured British troops that surrendered by General Burgoyne at Saratoga. So again, they also marched prisoners from Albemarle to Winchester. So again, I had AI create an image, which I love, and showing the images that, look, not everybody is a cook, which is still an honorable position, but they had pertinent roles throughout the Revolutionary War on these efforts for us to gain independence. So again, he was at the siege in New York. He did get wounded and everything, but it didn't stop him. He continued to guard prisoners after Cornwallis surrendered. And of course, he returned with them to Winchester, Virginia, where he gets discharged. He was honorably discharged, of course, in 1781, and his discharge was signed by Colonel Taylor. He did apply for a pension while he's in Ohio in 1818. So Charles Barnett, another one, from Albemarle County, 1764, 1765, he's born. He's also considered, this one is high yellow, so I love the descriptors. He joined the Army 1780 and the 7th Regiment. He left Albemarle in 1800, and we've been able to track him through Tennessee, Georgia, and on to Granville, North Carolina. I obtained the this Patriot label up here on the Black Pearls of Genealogy site, which has free downloads. And this one is Revolutionary War, Patriot Soldier, and the time. So on my ancestry page for Charles Barnett, you will see that I now have him designated to keep myself straight on researching people. Who were they? Revolutionary War, or were they enslaved at UVA and so forth? And also, I'm showing you a picture of Albemarle Charlottesville board member, Helise Henderson Jones. Charles Barnett is her 5th great grandfather. And again, just all of this just verified in the last couple of weeks. She's also on the board of Descendants of Enslaved Communities at UVA. what you're looking at, the record, is the marriage record between Charles Barnett and Lucy Bowles in 1785. All right, so we congratulate Miss Helise on being able to identify a Black patriot in her family. Here's the service card on the left, and then on the right is a partial showing of a document that is a list of Virginia pensioners, and they have their rank, their name, and how they got paid, and so forth. So now we have Henry Nelson Hill in Orange County. And I was able to pull from Find a Grave the photograph on the right. Now he's born about 1753, died about 1833. Married, had 5 children. His military service, you can see he was with Heath's regiment. So again, open for more research to be done. He was in the battle at Charleston, Brandywine, Mammoth, and Princeton. So you're seeing the information that we can gather on these individuals. January 1782, Hill was discharged, and he was in Ohio when he applied for his pension. So he also enlisted from the courthouse in Orange, and the whole pension application is transcribed on that revwarapps.org site. And the county of Franklin in the state of Ohio personally appeared, he went in and applied for the pension. So when I'm talking about these pensions, this is so key in the research, and I'm sure others will agree with me. You're hearing their voice. They're saying, I did this, I was here, this is who I served with, and so forth. So again, acknowledging Henry Nelson Hill of Orange County. Also, you can see a picture on the right-hand side, 5th great granddaughter, which is Bertha French. Now, she's the vice president of the descendants of the enslaved communities. And you see their emblem also along with Helise. She shared information with me. Again, his obituary in the Alexandria, Virginia newspaper, 1833, identifying Henry Hill, a colored man. And I'm going to say this, sometimes this is the only way we know these are men of color, because of newspaper articles, obituaries, and so forth. And he died in Chillicothe, Ohio, at the age of 80. They said he was buried with honors of the war and so forth. And again, he was participated in the battles of Lexington, Brandywine, Mammoth, Princeton, and Yorktown. And peace to his ashes is what the article said. Now, what she shared with me in the middle, and I don't know if she's here or not, but thank you for sharing that information, is the Chillicothe Advisors. Now, again, this is 1833, and I know you can't read it, but I just want y'all to know one thing that grabbed both of us, like, what in the world were they doing? But again, that's back then, and their state of mind back then, say 1833. And I typed down here, yet was when something should return to dose and mingle each earth. He of the race that peoples the distort continent, and Adam with all that had gone before him, and his veins were contaminated by the blood of his ancestors. So in this article is very racist, what we would deem racist today, and this is 1833. Some of these outlooks haven't changed. And here they're talking about his service, but they're also saying because he's Black. He's contaminated by the blood of his ancestors. So it gives you a different, one of those emotional rides when we're doing this research. So she also shared with me, so thank you to Bertha, descendants of Henry Hill, which again, as folks are researching, you want to be able to share this information. So we've got Henry Hill's great grandmother and mother of James Henry Nelson Waring. And again, picture 1, and then picture 2 is the couple, picture of Henry Hill and his wife, Elizabeth Smith, but he's the grandson of Henry Hill. So again, amazing and beautiful pictures of the time, and I love looking at the clothes and the purse the lady has, the great grandfather Adams. But the purse that the lady has, love it. Those things are actually in style now. So if I come back to the book, The Forgotten Patriots, did you know that Thomas Jefferson sent 5 of his enslaved individuals to provide service during the war? This is a clip of their entries on there. George Jefferson, Jupiter Jefferson, Suki Jefferson, Ursula Jefferson, and then Mary Hemings. So you think about it, it's given their location. Some of those names did not stick with them. As you know, that's a myth that all slaveholders took on their slaveholder names. No, they did not. And why would they even want to? During the colonial times, you might see it a little bit more, but in my research and what I'm doing at UVA, it's a no. Some of them might have, and then I would think about as a parent, I would always want my children to know how to find me. And if I'm enslaved at one person, then yes, I might take on that name. But that's my 21st century thinking. I don't know if that happened during that time, but these folks that are listed here did not carry the Jefferson name. So, a little bit about Jupiter, which most everybody in Central Virginia knows. He was the manservant. He's born at about 1743 at Shadwell, which is another one of Jefferson's plantation, and he died about 1800 at Monticello. He was the personal servant, manservant that belonged to Thomas Jefferson. He had a wife, and they also had children. I know of 3, and Philip Evans was the only one that survived till adulthood. So again, during this time, there could be limited information. He was personal valet and companion. Basically, Jefferson and Jupiter grew up together, and he went pretty much everywhere Jefferson did. He was not involved with any military battles, but he was there to support his owner, master, so forth. So he contributed to whatever Jefferson was doing, not in the battlefield, but anything that he's doing to make sure he was okay to fulfill his political and leadership roles as the governor. So there were 6 Allstocks or L-stacks out of Louisa County. Paul Heineck's book is the one I used to reference for this one, this Absalom Allstock. And again, there's descendants of them. Henry Goins out in California is descendants coming from these Allstocks, and also the Goins folks. So you look at the military service, he had two terms or 2 tours, and he was coming out of Louisa County, as I noted here. And you can see he was with the 2nd Regiment and so forth, but his job was involved in digging entrenchments, making sand baskets and so forth. So that's why you're seeing the image of doing that type of work. His information is on fold 3 for sure. And he was involved with quite a bit, during the war. So again, there's 6 with the same last name, and they are all connected. So on his first tour, he left out of Louisa County Courthouse and went to the Hanover County Courthouse, where he joined that 2nd Regiment. So I wanted to make that effort because there's some folks that might be here from those counties. All right. I'm sorry, let me go back. So, and also in Paul Heineck, I picked up the other names of Charles Allstock, who is said to be the son of Michael Allstock Sr. He served in the 3rd Virginia Regiment. And also you could see the different places that people are doing. And one thing that I want to share, that when we think about research in Revolutionary War people, and we know it's before, of course, the Civil War, but you think about the travels and the experiences that these folks, most of them enslaved, or a lot of them enslaved, some were free, but think of the areas where they would have went versus them still being on a plantation. So there's something about them traveling in these different areas and learning about different things and seeing different things. So I just want to share about, because I sit back and I think about, oh my goodness, somebody went to Charleston, they went up to New York, they went everywhere. And again, there's another story there. We're not tracking, we're tracking the military part of it, but tracking their experiences, we can only get that by hearing from their voice, from their pensions. So again, you can see that this Abraham Davis I have listed on the slide basically testified as supporting that Allstock was involved and listed with him, and they were at certain, engagements that took place. And one that they mentioned was Harlem Heights in New York. They were also involved in the Battle of Trenton in Princeton. There's a James Allstock. He's also said to be the son of Michael. He serves in the 3rd Regiment, and he didn't come back to Louisa County, and his pension record was rejected. And so there's more research to be done on him, because I want to know where he went and what happened to him. And are there any wives or children to look up? Here's Michael Allstack Jr. So you see he's got a drum and he's somewhat in a uniform. And remember, all AI generated. He lived in Louisa County when he filed a suit against William Johnston, which got dismissed. He was a drummer in the Hazen Regiment in a list of men that were considered part of the quota for the state and so forth. So he's on the muster and the payrolls of the war for the revolution. And I got that information from Hattie Truss. But on the 6th of January, 1800, he was ordered to remain in Albemarle County Jail for breach of peace until a bond was posted of $100 by 2 gentlemen, James Goins and, of course, Shadrach Battles. They each had put up a bond of $50 for the guy's good behavior. So forth. So again, look at the connection. So all of these guys are going to be serving together. So you have to look at everybody that's around them. So here we have a James Hawkins from Fluvanna County. And he was born about 1763. Fluvanna County, and I think Linda Gore is here. They have been, the Historical Society is also doing research on the Revolutionary War soldiers, white and black. So they are building a nice collection up. This guy was about 57 and no family with him when he went to apply for a pension in 1820. He enlisted in for 2 years, so they had the option of coming in at 2 years or 3 years in 1779 and 1780. He was with the regiment commanded by Colonel Harris. And again, look at this. Being a colored man, he was taken as a waiter to Major Gromham. Don't know what that is right now. I'm going to figure that out and be able to share a little bit more on James Hawkins. He did get a land warrant for 3 years and he died in 1824. And his information is also on Ancestry in Fold 3. So another one, and I just have a few more, Jesse Wood, Fluvanna County. He's another one. Of course, these folks are in the Forgotten Patriot book. So he enlists in King William County, and he was 16. But look at the description. 4 foot, 10 inches high, a planter, born in Hanover County, yellow complexion. And then they're showing he was a free man of color living in Fluvanna County when he applied for his pension, saying that he enlisted in King William County, 1778. Of course, he gets discharged in 1782. But on the tax rolls, he's listed as a mulatto. So the identifiers are also key, because if there are different identifiers and you've got a history of the yellow complexion or free man of color living and stuff, you want to make sure you got the right Jesse Wood, or make sure that you're dealing with someone that has just the same name and they're white. So again, Jesse Wood of Fluvanna County. So I want to go to a Goins right quick. Joshua Goins in Louisa County. He got drafted, and I'm not quite sure how that happened yet, but I'll find out. Into the Revolution from Louisa County. He served for 18 months. And look, 5'7", high, yellow complexion, and born in Louisa County. And again, they're identifying. So pay attention to what's there. Paul Heinnich's site is freeafricanamericans.com. He has a list of these things I've been sharing with you on that website. You can see it online or purchase that book from him. So now I want to add an interesting one that I learned about. Kay Slaughter, who some of you local folks will know, um, she is a slaughter, Culpeper Slaughter. She was on the board at Upper Charlottesville Historical Society. So she knew of this story, but also descendants of this Spencer knew the story. I put Slaughter in as the last name, not knowing what name he actually would have carried, but his owner, who he was owned by Captain Philip Slaughter. He's born about 1740s in Culpeper County, and he died 1827, 1828, and his wife's name was Grace. I watched on the video that I mentioned earlier the SAR Culpeper chapter in DAR. One of the descendants out of Michigan came down and shared information about Spencer. Spencer had 3 children that I'm aware of. And again, he was enslaved. He went with Captain Philip Slaughter with him to provide service. And he was in Virginia, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Battle of Trenton, Mammoth, Princeton, and of course the winter at Valley Forge. So of course the picture is acknowledging the white soldier and a Spencer. And again, that's not what he looks like. This is AI generated. But oral history came down through the Spencer about Spencer in the Slaughter family, as well as his descendants. So the White family had oral history on Spencer, and so did the Black family, his descendants. So again, awesome information provided about Kay Slaughter. She's a descendant of Captain Philip Slaughter. He's locally excuse me. He's locally approved by the the SAR chapter and recognized, but he's pending at the national chapter. So again, kudos for Kate for giving that information because we wouldn't have known about him. And remember on the chart, there were 20 people of color at Culpeper County that served and provided a service on behalf of our independence from Great Britain. So I'm going to have to say something about about the women. This is one of my favorite books, Karen Cook Bell, and she talks about the name of it is Running from Bondage. And of course, I had an AI figure shared on the right. But enslaved women in their remarkable fight for freedom in the revolutionary America. So it's interesting what I learned from this book. Also, that Matthew Spooner, a historian, said he gave an example of a Margaret escaped slavery twice, y'all, in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, in 1770, and also again in 1773. In her first escape, she wore men's clothing and sought to conceal her identity by dressing as a waiting boy. He also gives information about Jenny, who ran away 8 months pregnant in September 1776 with her 2-year-old daughter from Monk's Neck near Petersburg, Virginia. Think about this. These women are running away, pregnant and with their babies. And are they running away because of the war, or are they running away seeking out that freedom? So Bet, another one, age about 21, escaped slavery with her 3-year-old daughter in British-occupied Pennsylvania, and 2 white men helped her escape. So again, AI generated. picture. Same thing here. Enslaved women had the desire. What I learned from reading Karen Bell's book was that more women, and I'm saying enslaved women, were running away, escaping during the Revolutionary War time than it was during the Civil War time. And I just see that as amazing. But some of the things that were said was basically those white men were not paying attention to the black women, where in the Civil War, there was probably more attention. So again, they desired for freedom for themselves and their children, and that's what made them flee slavery during the war. They ran away more frequently, just what I was saying, during this time before and after the war, because people just weren't paying attention to them. They were doing what they were supposed to do, and some of them were successful. Women participated also by boycotting British goods, and I'm talking about black women now, and producing goods for soldiers and spying, and some even disguised themselves as men. And if you remember, on the Mary Hemings on the list where it showed in the Forgotten Patriots book, she was on the list that was sent to provide a service. She's born about 1753. She died about after 1834, either in the city of Charlottesville or in Albemarle. She was enslaved at Monticello. She did get freed. She is classified from SAR and DAR as providing patriotic service. She became a prisoner of war. That's why you see the image there, see the bars in the back and the red coats there. And some of these, so I got some of these sources from Free Someday, Cinder Stanton, and then Memoirs of a Monticello Slave by Isaac Jefferson. There's the page things. She was enslaved and again later sold and freed. She lived a portion of her time in Charlottesville, and she may have lived there as a free woman after the Revolution. She did have children, though there's records of her descendants are all within that Hemings family lineage, and their narratives you can see on the Monticello website or honoringourpatriots.dar.org. So again, Mary Hemings provided a service and also was held by the British. So amazing stuff men and women were doing. So final takeaway here, remember the services of African and African Americans were always fighting alongside the white men. Do not just end at the Revolutionary War. Don't forget these are other wars that they were involved in. Anything, like I said in the beginning, that had to do with this country and the loyalty to this country, there's evidence of it. So don't think there's not documents, oral histories, and journals and diaries and things that are out there for folks to find. So I'm going to say one last quote from Benjamin Quarles. And he said, and this is in 1996, he said, the Negro's role in the revolution can be best understood by realizing that his major loyalty was not to be a place nor to a people, but to a principle. Benjamin Quarles. And y'all know what this means. So here's some resources. And again, this is recording, so you can always come back to them. But I cited some of the resources where I'm working on for the book, and this is just a few of them. I probably have a good 100 books on and journals and things for the Revolutionary War. And I thank the folks that have shared stuff with me as well. And then here's contact information. And again, you can always find me with the Historical Society, and we got Sterling that's here if we have additional questions. And that's the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society. And this is our contribution to Black history basically in Central Virginia.